Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the second panel discussion of رواد Qatar 2021. My name is Amna Al-Mazroui and I'm the Executive Director of Digital Technology and Data at Qatar Development Bank. I'll be moderating today's session titled Market Lagging to Market Leading, Agile Digital Transformation for Organizational Success. Please welcome our esteemed panelists who will be navigating this timely topic with me. Joining me here, our first guest in the studio, Mr. Jamal Bdair, Microsoft Small and Medium Business Lead for the Middle East Cluster. Joining me, Mr. Anton Pronin, Skolkovo's Foundation Corporate Innovation Director for the IT Cluster. And our third esteemed panelist is Ms. Bouquet Chahadar, Vice President for Global Operations at the Global Entrepreneurship Network. Thank you all for bringing your unique perspectives to our conversation today. Today's panel discussion highlights trendy topics. First is the advantages young enterprises enjoy in planning and implementing digital transformations. We talk about having an integrated approach to executing digital transformation that is agile, adaptable, and future-ready. We end our conversation with practical advices on successful execution. Before we can talk about winning approaches to digital transformation, Jamal, I wanted to open the discussion with you. In reality and on the ground, what is digital transformation really? Why has it become a top priority for entrepreneurs in the past few years?
Thank you very much, Amna, first of all, for having me with you today. And it's a great pleasure to be with QDB and رواد Qatar 2021. It's a great starting point for our conversation. We've heard the term digital transformation a lot over the course of maybe the past decade. But I think something unique happened in the past few months, which is the pandemic, right? And this has accelerated really the implementation of digital transformation strategies across the globe and across different industries. So we've heard a lot about, theoretically what digital transformation is, how it can help companies, transform. But a lot of companies, were reluctant to go and take the bold step of actually implementing that DT strategy. So COVID definitely was an accelerator. Some did it by will, others, by force, but ultimately it's a trend or it's a model that had to be implemented. Now, going back to your question on how we can define it, if you want to keep it really in simple terms, digital transformation is how a company can harness the power of technology to reinvent itself, right? When we say reinventing yourself, this can take different forms or different, let's say, it can be impacted across different pillars. So if you think today of an organization, there are 4 key pillars that will be impacted when you do digital transformation. The first one is the way you empower your employees, right? Today, employees expect from their employers to have the latest and greatest technologies to allow them to be more productive. The second pillar is around optimizing your business processes. So how can you use technology to streamline your supply chain, procurement cycle, make sure that you are more nimble, can do more with less resources, right? And increase the productivity. The third aspect is really around engaging with customers in a much different way. Today, customers expect companies to anticipate what they need rather than responding to them reactively, right? So how can you use technology to achieve that? And last but not least, it's really about reinventing the way you deliver your goods and services. Think of e-commerce, right? How retailers today have shifted from brick and mortar to digital. So this is really how e-commerce touches each and every area of the business.
I completely agree with you, particularly on the point of how organizations really define it, because I think digital transformation can mean a lot of things.
True.
Differently to other organizations. And the key is to actually associate it within your strategy. What does it mean to you? And I love that you've actually started the point with the employees, because that's where the execution part, and we're going to talk more about it towards the end of 100%. Our panel. Moving from Doha to our guest in Russia, Mr. Anton, from your own perspective, what does digital transformation entail? Is it simply about adopting and deploying smart digital technologies to run business operations, or is there more to that?
Thank you. I'm glad to greeting all our participants for today, and thank you for the invitation. It's a great pleasure for me to be today online with you. Along with the development and diffusion of the digital technologies, the business environment is also changing. So today, almost every top manager from Skolkovo Partners list think about digital transformation of their business in order to create more sustainable business models that are in line with the trend of digital economy. The period of the pandemic, which did not have the best effort on many traditional business models, further highlighted the relevance of the digital transformation process for large, medium, and even small companies, for startups. And by restructuring business processes and changing entire industries, technologies are also creating a new world for the users, changing their behavior and encouraging to choose new products, new way how to get these products and services. In other words, user experience and habits are radically changing. So digital transformation, answering your questions, is not about the hyper automation, not only about that, and more about, and not about deploying newest technology. It's more about how we collaborate with our consumer across the digital channels and what we know about their demands. Organization constructing digital networks for gathering total information about users. It's called the Internet of Behavior. They combine devices for collecting no digital dust, individual data from people's lives. And organization needs this data to study key needs and consider it in their digital strategy. So the client centricity is more important trend for today for all digital transformation strategy.
I think you, Mr. Anton, you bring a very good example. You particularly started off the conversation with SMEs. I've noticed many honestly say that young enterprises have an advantage compared to large and long-established ones when laying out the digital transformation strategies and execution. My question to our guest who's joining us from the United States, Ms. Bouquet, are young enterprises indeed better positioned to succeed with digital transformation more than large established enterprises? And more importantly, how can that level the playing field?
Thank you very much, Amna, and thank you very much, QDB, for having me here. Really happy to join this panel at Road as we celebrate Global Entrepreneurship Week. So my answer would be probably yes and no. As Jamal and Anton mentioned, with digital transformation, you need to rethink, reinvent how your company uses technology, people, processes for new business models and new revenue streams. And this needs to be driven by changes in customer expectations around your products and services. For example, if you're building traditional goods and services, you need to build digital products, right? So maybe a mobile app or an e-commerce platform like Jamal mentioned. And this applies to both small and large enterprises. But in either of the cases, you must operate at the pace of maybe a software company. And they operate already on product-based models. So if you are building a software company as a startup or an enterprise, then you obviously have the competitive advantage. But if you are a startup, the fact that you are still small and flexible, that is a huge advantage. But I would say the disadvantage is that you don't necessarily have the structure to set up these processes. And I think, I want to make an important point here. Many people use the term digital transformation interchangeably with digitalization. And if we just say digitalization, as all of our panelists mentioned, it is an oversimplification, right? So digitalization is the move from a non-digital to digital process in doing business. So say you might, for your accounting, adopt an accounting technology instead of using paper-based accounting. That would affect how you do accounting and perhaps get you a better result in financial management. But it would not necessarily change how your business works fundamentally. So digitalization is kind of essential for digital transformation. True, but this is just one of the steps. So I think going back to the question, yes, small businesses have an advantage, but not necessarily all of the advantages.
I think you've tapped into a very important point, particularly around the digitalization and digital transformation. And it goes back to the point of the pillars that we have for digital transformation. As my guest in the studio here joining me, Jamal, when he started up the conversation, he said one of the key pillars was the operational efficiency. And unfortunately, some people take that only single pillar of digital transformation and view it as the full-fledged journey. While in reality, it could be more. It could be actually repositioning yourself within the market. I've noticed entrepreneurs focus initially on the operational efficiency pillar, and few take it as the core positioning of the business strategy. Mr. Jamal, would you agree with that observation? Particularly, what areas do you think small or general enterprises do not pay enough attention on, while that's the great impact when it comes to digital transformation? And moreover, how can businesses actually look at, and building on Mrs. Bouquet's conversation, how can we build on that digital transformation as a key component in its positioning in the market?
Right. No, it's the question is spot on. So I would like to first of all emphasize on the point that Bouquet mentioned. So yes, despite the advantage that people might see in the beginning for smaller companies, right, when it comes to driving transformation, larger companies today more than ever before understand that if they don't embrace this transformation, they're going to be out of business, right? And we've seen many companies, without mentioning names, that were late to act and ultimately, found themselves out of business. So back to your question, before you think about the technology or the business process, the most important element, in my opinion, is culture, right? So any business leader today that wants to drive transformation, if they don't have the right culture that can augment their vision in order to drive the change that they want to achieve in the organization, even if they have the best consultants, the best plan in the world, it's not going to work. And it's very normal, as humans, we don't like change a lot, right? When we are in our comfort zone, we just like to stay where we are because we're used to that setting. So whenever a business leader comes in with a new idea, some employees might resist, right? And many of them might not like what the change might bring to them. So this is where the business leader's role comes into the picture by, number one, bringing clarity to the employees because they are his first customers, right? So they need to buy into what he wants to achieve and make sure that he also demonstrates a level of confidence, but also brings comfort to them, so that they don't feel afraid or scared, that this change is gonna maybe impact them one way or the other. So that's number one. The second point has to do with leading by example. So if I am today an organization that, let's say, doesn't have an automated system, I can't expect, the mid or the lower level employees to use this from day one if, as the business leader, I'm not even using this in my day-to-day job, right? So I need to lead by example in order to demonstrate how things can be different. And then last but not least, when you spoke about approaching the market, right, you need to be a good listener as an organization, whether you're a startup or a large enterprise, in order to really understand what the market needs. You're not always there to impose things on your customers because customers come first. So listen to them, see what their problems are, and then think of the solution that can help achieve their objectives.
I love the points that you have mentioned, particularly around the culture. Culture is a big thing, close to my heart. And I have actually had a separate area around it when we're going to detail it. And especially the focus on employees and customer. I think the key theme that I've been noticing in all the answers is actually to have the strategy evolve around the culture and how can we make it in reality customer-centric. If we move from strategy and the impact and the objectives that we would want to achieve, I always remember this saying, strategy and vision aren't enough. It's really about execution each day and every day. If we move a little bit towards the execution bit of the digital transformation, Mr. Anton, why should companies focus, I would say, on agility in execution and resilience when setting the objectives and the roadmap of digital transformation strategy? More to that, are there other universal goals that digital transformation execution must aim for?
So a large corporation always have a choice. On the one hand, not to lose the key advantages of the current business model and to ensure sustainable operations. And on the other hand, to quickly transform in response to changes in consumers' behavior and global trends, such as emergence of ecosystems, the development of D2C, that's mean direct-to-consumer models of the largest manufacturers, and different social, ecological, and technological changes. Some examples of such transformation here in Russia, we have Sberbank and Yandex, through their developed marketplaces, directly sell products and services of various types to the audience of their ecosystems, work at a cross-industry intersection. Maybe somebody don't know, Sberbank several years ago was only bank with several financial services, and Yandex was just a browser that helped to search information. So a certain level of maturity is required to work with innovations. Companies have to create special project offices or innovational department that will integrate external innovation to internal processes. For huge corporations, it's like a virus. The corporate immune system is always trying to push out an innovation virus. Such a transformation puts forward new requirements also for managers and for strategical management tools. On this stage, efficiently to collaborate with innovation acceleration institutes such as Skolkovo Innovation Center East. With our corporate partners, we use several tools as a consultants or as a suppliers for adopting innovation. For example, a design-led strategy approach helps to react in early stage on new trends and consumers' behavior. Find new markets and quickly prototype, test such a prototype, and deploy new products. So digital transformation affects global changes in three domains: people management, as our colleagues and panelists already mentioned, technologies and processes. In every domain, you'll have to make cross-domain goals and KPIs, key performance indicators, such as study people about agile methodologies, create agile procedures for scouting and testing new ideas, and be able to flexibly create product teams based on proven hypotheses.
I think you've touched on very important, and I would say a brave point, because so many people really debate how do we approach it, and you've discussed the aspect of employees. And what I've noticed, honestly, the execution could be different from one company to the other, depending on many factors, including the size of the company. I know we've spoken about young enterprises, we've spoken about culture, and we've spoken about as well, I would say, some aspect of it into the leadership style and how do we execute. To me personally, I think I've said it before, I believe culture plays an instrumental role in the success. Ms. Bouquet, if we move a little bit onto the point that we had just tapped into when it comes to the execution, with the vision in mind, what do you think is the right approach to execution? We have seen companies who take a top-down approach where the founder is involved in the execution. I know our esteemed panelists have provided an example in Russia where innovation is cultivated. We see other examples in the world, such as Tesla, where innovation is actually embodied at a strategy level. However, we see some other examples as well. Other companies who approach execution really bottom up, where there are I would say, same approach. There are innovation hubs. The innovation or the digital transformation is embodied within the employees level. So my question to you, what's the right approach? Is it bottom down? Is it bottom up? Or is there an integrated way to go about executing digital transformation?
I think that's a great question, and it's also a very difficult question. I would love to hear what our panel thinks about this, as well as my own opinion. In my view, both of these work, because I think we touched upon it. The idea is to focus on the goals and get the whole organization involved. Amna, you and Jamal mentioned this as part of the culture, right? And it always helps to have someone who's passionate on the topic to lead it, top down or bottom up. And at the end of the day, both methodologies have challenges. A visionary leader always helps, but if the benefits are not clearly communicated, it will not work. And I would say this is probably one of the top reasons why it will not work. We talked a little bit about employee engagement, and there are many reasons why it will not work. But communication, I think, is definitely the key. And of course, the digital transformation needs to take place while you're operating your business, right? And going back to the startups point of view, your company's day-to-day processes already take up so much of your schedule, if not all of it. So prioritizing it and communicating it clearly, repeatedly, to a wide set of stakeholders, including your staff, including your partners, including your customers, is really important. And at the end of the day, for it to happen, everybody needs to be on board with the change. That is the key.
No, I completely agree with you, and that's why I said it's a very brave question, because I think it is a tough one, and I don't think anyone would be able to say that's the way to go about it. So many factors come into it: the size of the organization, the culture, and more.
And you can make it work both ways, really, and you could also fail both ways. So.
Agreed. No, I think
and there's no harm in failing as well, as long as you fail fast.
And learn, iterate with the customer, and move forward.
Yeah.
So Jamal, your focus in Microsoft has been on small and medium enterprises. How can entrepreneurs lay out a digital transformation journey that pushes the vision forward? So I know we've spoken about having a leader that actually has a clear vision, and at the same time we've spoken about realizing the goals so that there is enough buy-in from the employees. How do you do that?
Yeah.
Go into the execution mode without losing sight of the operational realities, because it will hit. Operational reality is going to hit. And I think one thing that both panelists have tapped into in their answers was, within the execution, do you need to have a dedicated team for successfully planning and laying it out? Or do you believe that that's something that can be integrated within everyone's job?
Yeah, I think it's a valid question. So look, going back to the point of culture, right? So you have some employees that, as I said, will embrace, right, the transformation that you want to drive. And then you have other employees that would resist. So having, if you want to call it a DT unit, a digital transformation unit in your organization is key, right? And it will play the role of the orchestrator as you transition between the old world, let's say, to the new world, right? Because this is not going to be easy. You will face a lot of hurdles, and you need someone to steer this transformation as you move forward. Now, how can they build this digital transformation strategy and execute on it without losing sight on the operational processes or challenges or realities, as you mentioned? I think the key here is piloting, right? So Having a beta version is not always for software. It also applies to anything in life, including digital transformation strategies and business models. Having a proof of concept for either a new product that you want to launch in the market or a change that you want to drive internally is key, because this really allows you to benchmark, number one, the reaction that you might have, whether it's internal or external. What are the challenges that you might face when you go big, right? And then it allows you to, as I mentioned earlier, fail fast and fix things in a shorter period of time. And even if you think about larger companies or even startups, this is today becoming more and more a common trend, right? Or a common model. Many companies today, when they want to introduce a new product, you see that they label it as beta, and then they tell you, we would like to hear your feedback about the experience, how you manage to interact with our application so that we can make it better. And even for startups, when they want to translate this business idea that they have into an actual business, they also need to test the waters in the market. And this is something many startups today miss out on, right? They think that the idea that they have is like the best thing ever, and they will definitely be able to succeed in it when they roll it out to the market. But then when they do that, they face the harsh reality whereby they realize, the market expectations were completely different than what they thought would be the case. So having this POC, proof of concept, in place will definitely help overcome these challenges that might face companies in the execution.
I think two words you've mentioned, and I really agree with them. The first was the reference to the software, right?
Yeah.
And the great challenge that we see is many people jump into, I think, digital transformation having that technological aspect pillar as a main core central element.
Sure.
And then they're shocked with the reality, because that could be the best technology, and then they put it across of the customer and it's not what they had anticipated. And honestly, from my own experience, I think customers enjoy being part of the process, right? They enjoy giving feedback. It's I think the digital economy that Mr. Anton, I think, tapped into in terms of how everything is really connected. Mr. Anton, taking on and building on the idea that we had, once a company decides on the technologies and the software or the systems to deploy, what other elements come into play while laying out digital transformation strategy? I'm very curious about the human element and how it fits within the overall digital transformation strategy.
Mr. Jamal Deer was talking a lot about the approaches, and I see from the market that huge companies trying to integrate the product approach culture, and we also helping them to integrate the design thinking approach culture. It helps to build the client-centric products that really help consumers to fix their demand, not to create or think about this demand from the office, from the different cabinets. So the product owner needs to work by the cross-functional model in the company. And the company can't just enter such a role, a product owner, without changing all other operational and business model. Many companies, especially in the agro industry, face staff reluctance to accept innovation or lack of trained personnel, experienced personnel. For example, Fanuc, this is our partner, opened innovation center that developed and testing robot logistic manipulators. So they create a special training center for new specialities to educate people for new specialities, such a manipulator operator, because there are still no any special education like universities for the newest technology specialities, and experienced personnel is one of the challenging barriers that company need to fix and nowadays and tomorrow. That's why almost every enterprise in Russia have their own corporate educational center and spend a lot of resources for human development and changing corporate culture. That one of expensiest factor for the big companies.
I think the point that you've mentioned, so I've written here 2 points that I want to recap on because they're really important. The first one was around the partners, and that's something that we're going to talk about in details. And the second thing, I think, around the educational centers, a huge topic that we have seen right now is the upskilling and the reskilling, because we're really moving towards a completely new digital economy. I know we've spoken about employees and we've spoken a lot about being customer-centric. But my second question, and I don't want to end the panel without tapping into it, many enterprises, their success has been on the partnerships, or I would say the ecosystem that they actually have created. We've seen international businesses such as Uber, Airbnb, and many other successful local e-commerce businesses that we have here in Qatar that created digital transformation evolving around a full ecosystem. So they've created essentially an ecosystem. There's an increasing focus on the importance of partnerships for a success of an enterprise in the new economy. Ms. Bouquet, can digital transformation create new possibilities for partnership and collaboration that are otherwise, I would say, unavailable to an SME, and why?
Yes, this is a very important point, and my answer is yes, for sure. I think we have a great example with us today, Jamal's organization, Microsoft, but we have many others like Amazon's Web Services, Google, Stripe, HubSpot, just to name a few. They all have these ecosystems, they have these programs, they have these special offers, discounts, products and services designed especially for startups and small businesses. And part of their mission is to help these startups grow and to showcase them as a success story, as part of their success story, but as part of the ecosystem's success story. So becoming part of these ecosystems definitely helps. It also helps you attract more new clients who are part of this ecosystem. So it really is a win-win. I think maybe one layer to add to this, that's not always that obvious, especially talking from the startups and SMEs perspective. You do need to do your research, right? So you do need to decide, are they offering what you really need? Say artificial intelligence or deep learning. There are all these hot buzzwords in tech today, and those vendors can be quite persuasive. But most small businesses are not necessarily suitable for AI solutions. So before you actually purchase one, you have to make sure you satisfy the conditions that will make its adoption a success. And I think just going back to all of the panel's points here, you have to remember that you're not on this boat alone, right? So there is this McKinsey survey I was looking at. Only 11% of all business executives believe their current business models will be economically viable through 2023, which is, not very much ahead of us. And most of these executives also say that their companies must build new digital businesses. So we are all trying to make that change. And knowing that we need to make this a priority, I think is the most important aspect. And then if you start thinking that way, and if you start contributing and collaborating within those ecosystems, then you start making that change. And of course, I think we'll probably get to this at the end. It doesn't happen overnight.
No, I think you've put it spot on when it comes to the partnerships. And I think what we have that's happening across the world with global entrepreneurship, we can moderating such discussions is the way to go about it, right? When we're sitting here having these conversations, we're all learning from each other. And with digital transformation, we're here, although we're almost scattered across the globe, which is the beauty of it, I think. To sum up today's discussion, and you've anticipated Bouquet correctly, I am going to jump into that question. And that's a question to all three of our esteemed guests. And I'll start with you, Jamal. What would be your advice to our audience who are joining us here from across the globe as the most critical factor to do to ensure successful digital transformation, and what to avoid? It's a tough question, but good luck.
Look, I think the answer to the question basically is a summary of what we all discussed, in today's panel. As we said, culture is key, right? So whether you are a business leader of a startup or of a large organization, think about how you can rally for support inside your organization to drive that transformation that you need. This is something that you should not really overcome or underestimate. The second point is, as I said, think big. This is very important because if you want to succeed, you need to bring something new to the table. But start small, right? So start testing out whatever idea you have in mind with a small pool of audience, maybe across different markets as well, not necessarily just a single market, and see how it plays out. And then if you see that there are things, which are out of control or you want to tweak, then tweak them as you go. And then when you perfect the model that you want to launch, then you can start scaling it either locally or globally as well in the markets that you desire. So this would be my advice to people who are looking to digitally transform.
Clear. So the advice to continue doing is the cultural aspect, right, and the buy-in. And the thing to avoid is to actually spend a lot of time alone, yes, planning and not actually hitting the market fast and learning. True. As you said, I think I love that quote, think
big, start small, and fail fast.
Exactly. I'll move to our second guest, Mr. Anton. The tough question goes to you. What are the things that we need to do and what are the things that we need to avoid in order to have a successful digital transformation?
So I can just add from our expertise that don't think that if you make a good scouting of the technology that you already fixed the product problem, because there are no any product can provide from the startup. You need to design your own product with the startup. So pay attention to the design process. This is the first. The second one, the research is very important on each stage. Don't try to research on the technology trends. Research your competitors, research the patents, M&As, any notes and product development. So any information just to check your hypothesis. And the third one is it's kind of fail fast, but make your business hypothesis and design them and testing them. This is the most efficiently approach for nowadays. Just to make hypotheses, test them on the consumers, and make a small prototypes. And after you get a proof of concept, you can roll out it to the market.
I wrote down the point that you had when you said, I think that's your first point, which is the design process. I think that's a really big one. Although we talk about agility and culture, but I think having that design process is really key, because it's very normal for you to get excited about technology and just spend that time on it. So I think having the design process is really, really crucial. Off to our third guest, Ms. Bouquet. The question goes to you.
again, I will probably reiterate some of the points that were made as part of this panel. Important reasons digital transformation goes wrong. So one is this obsession with big bang, immediate change. And another one is focusing on cost cutting results. It creates wrong expectations about how what can be done and when. So, we have to avoid getting into this. And this is the tough part because, especially when it comes top down, the leadership may not always know what it takes to get there. So again, that's why the involvement of the whole organization and good communication is important. And I think another important one, this is really important for startups, is building digital transformation plans into your company's budget, because otherwise it will be really hard to allocate that from your daily operation budget. So you would really need to get buy-in from your board and from your investors. And the good thing is they will probably understand what you're talking about, because they're probably facing similar issues with what they're doing as well.
Thank you so much for your insights. Honestly, I think time did fly by. I have enjoyed a lot this session. Quick recap, I think there are 4 points that I've written down here. Think strategically. Many do confuse digital transformation with operational execution. Think, how would you incorporate it within your business strategy? Do consider and always have a priority the human aspect of it, whether we're looking at it from the employee's perspective. We've spoken greatly about reskilling and upskilling. We've spoken about the human aspect of incorporating the customer within the design process. We've spoken as well about partnerships. You're not alone on embarking digital transformation. The whole world is embarking on digital transformation. There are plenty of partnerships that you can explore. Not everything is around technology, and not every technology is suited for your organization. At the end of the day, what is the vision and how you are going to execute it in the way that suits the culture of your organization and the pace of your organization. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you so much for joining us.